Hello and welcome to the No One Asked You podcast. This is In the Bag, the Book Accountability Group, episode 5. I hope you're all having a wonderful week. We're about to head into the weekend, I suppose, and I've made a lot of progress on Dune thus far. I just finished part 2, Muad'Dib. For those interested in the Sanderson side of the channel, Kita and I just recorded chapter 49, I believe it was, in Well of Ascension. I have about an hour left of editing to get through on that, and we rather recorded chapter 39 in Way of Kings. That has been uploaded, edited, and uploaded, and there's going to be a lot of exciting episodes, I think, that everyone's really going to enjoy. Um, so, for Dune, let's go through everything I read, I suppose. I'll go through my notes. I've really found that the larger amounts that I read, as I'm reading through them, I feel as if I can clue into a lot of subtle details, but my note taking this week at least became more uh, like summaries. So I know I've lost a lot of that detail, but there's a lot that I catch going through that are really interesting. So I'm still sort of figuring out how I want to take my notes. But where last we left off, Jamis demands a fight, and Jessica tries to use the voice on him, but the Fremen force her to be silent, and Paul fights Jamis instead. Paul is wary because he's trained to fight with and against shields, and this will disrupt his timing. I thought that was a really good tension elevator. That really does elevate the tension of the fight. Hello, tall being. How are you? Uh, what have you read this week? Um, yeah, this consciousness about the shields and not having the shields added a lot of tension to the fight that I enjoyed. Even knowing more or less, particularly from the movie, but more or less how the fight was going to end, it was a tense situation, particularly that there's that added element of the Fremen think Paul is playing with Jamis, and that's not a good thing. So it's not even that you don't know how the fight is going to end. It's more like, what does Paul winning the fight in this manner mean for his relationship with the rest of the Fremen? So that was really exciting for me. Um, let's see. After First Blood, Paul offers Jamis an out, but the Fremen decline. That's going to be important post-fight. But essentially, when you agree to a duel like this, it's a duel to the death. The Fremen are very harsh in this way, I suppose. This is a fight to the death, and Paul wins. So Jessica asks, how does it feel to be a killer as cruelly as she can? And she does this because, if I recall correctly, she wants to instill in Paul a dislike of killing. Uh, that's a really good point. There's a lot more nuance and tension to the book duels, which you'll see near the end of the book as well, as opposed to the movie versions, which I still adore. Yes, it's the craziest thing. I really like the recent movies, but it's shocking to me like how much detail is lost from the book. Um, Two totally different experiences. Um, anyway, Jessica and I've been slowly getting through the Eye of the World and Jane Eyre myself. Nice. I still have Eye of the World sitting on my desk. I'll get to it eventually. I've also got The Godfather, which I want to finish. I don't know if I should say start or finish, but I've read 2 chapters in it, and that first chapter is not particularly short, so I'll say finish. I need to finish it, and I still have the Aeneid to get through. So much, so much. Um, Gosh. So, yeah, so Jessica wants to instill in Paul a dislike for killing. So she's a little cruel to him, and it works in conjunction with Stilgar commenting about how Paul was playing with Jamis. How are you enjoying those books, by the way? Um, I'd love to hear how you're enjoying them. Um, so this does ultimately successfully deter Paul from liking the act of killing. I don't know how much of that, though, was Jessica and Stilgar's comments versus how much of that was Paul's, I want to say, innate goodness. But I don't know how far I want to stretch this idea of Paul being innately good. He certainly feels extreme inner turmoil, but I think his hesitance to kill is more brought on by his knowledge of the oncoming jihad that will happen in his name, more so than anything that Stilgar or Jessica could have said in that moment. Yeah, I guess there's some inner goodness there. He's fighting against his destiny in that way. Paul explains he wasn't playing with Jamis. It was his first time killing, and he didn't want to do it. Um, and that's received well among the Fremen. So there's some sensitivity there, I suppose. Um, and yeah, the Fremen more or less accept that. It is important to note, though, that Paul offering a chance for Jamis to yield was almost a mechanical thing. It's part of his culture, something that he had learned from uh, Gurney and Duncan, Idaho, that at first blood you offer a chance um, to yield. Paul seems to be somewhat neutral good, I would think. A lot of his hesitancy I took as being from his youth, too. Yeah, that's a fair point. He is so much younger, I think, than he seems in the movies, and that has created an interesting dynamic, particularly later. He has kids now. Did not expect that in the book at all. There is none of that in the movie. But he becomes responsible for Jamis's 2 kids, who in turn was responsible for Geoff or Jeff's kids, who was someone that Jamis had killed. Um, Neutral good. I think that's fair. I mean, let's not pretend that a great wrong hadn't been done him and he's trying to survive. And he realizes that the avalanche, the chain of events, happens regardless of whether or not he dies. So he's just stuck in this position of he's this figure, whether he likes it or not. The kids, that one always catches people off guard. Yeah. Yeah. It's so strange because I feel like if I were a kid and some random person or even another person of my tribe killed my parent and then I was told that person, that killer is now to be my parent, I'd be like, I don't like you. I don't want you to exist. You killed my parent. Uh it's interesting to say the least. I don't dislike it. It's just it's very foreign to me, which I think is a big part of the point. The Fremen are this unique culture unto themselves, and Paul is. Um, there's a specific literary term for it, but you have the character who is in uh, an area outside of his expertise and he's the proxy for the audience to learn these things, which I was actually reflecting is very unique for a character who can see the future and therefore knows everything, more or less. Asterisk that. But that was Frank Herbert weaves a very interesting line there that I don't dislike at all. So Paul has won Jamis's water. They journey underground to a large pool of water that no Fremen will touch. They Now, if I recall correctly, in the movie, it's body water. Um, it's like this holy pool that no one drinks because it is the tribe. But in the book, at least at this point in the book, um, it's slightly different. The Fremen know the exact amount of water needed to terraform the planet successfully. And it seems that that's what this pool is for. The Fremen are pretty cool to me because in any other sci-fi setting, I could see them being an actual alien race, but Dune makes them very specifically human instead. Yeah, it's not bad. Um, I agree. The only non-humans that we get are, I think, the people of the what is it, Chom? The space transportation people, and I think it's like lightly suggested that they may have evolved beyond humanity or something to that effect. But I don't think that was like any big point made. There's been so much other stuff happening that I don't remember that element specifically. Okay, let's see. Yes, they have a funeral for Jamis, dividing up his belongings. Several Fremen call Jamis a friend, and Paul is expected to do so as well, but he has no clue how to call him a friend. And I remember thinking, I have no clue how he's going to get through this for many similar reasons that Paul himself goes through. It's like, I didn't know him. I just showed up and he challenged me to a duel. How do I call this guy a friend? So I really felt for him trying to figure that one out. But he finds the right words to say, which I think, if I recall correctly, was something to the effect of he taught me to value life because he was the first person I killed. Something of that essence. Um, and he sheds a tear, which is a very valuable gesture. And that's a really wonderful cultural thing. Little nugget there that I think is good. The Fremen are satisfied. Jessica has plans for Paul and how they can manipulate the Fremen, which speaks to Jessica's point of view. I really like Jessica quite a lot as a character. I think when I was making comparisons between Dune and Game of Thrones, I compared her to Catelyn Stark, and thus far, I like Jessica much more than Catelyn Stark. I am in the camp of I don't like Catelyn that much. I think she's well written. I just don't particularly care for her. Jessica, though, is fantastic. Hello, Taylor or Libralita. Um, how are you doing? What have you read this week? Let's see. Jessica's plans for Paul, for how they can manipulate the Fremen. Paul thinks of his mother as an enemy. That was a big, big thing. Um, you're okay. Yay. I know last time we spoke, you said you were getting over a cold of some kind. Nothing you have not read this week? Wow. You should, but alas. Fair. So Paul thinks of her as an enemy, which comes right off the heels of Jessica thinking, I have plans for Paul, and I have to manipulate the Fremen. So there could be a divide here between them. I apologize if I like have shamed you. I meant for that to be more lighthearted than I think it might have sounded, Taylor. Um, let's see. Paul thinks of his mother as an enemy. Through all of the timelines Paul can see, he sees no way short of everyone in their traveling party dying to change the army of zealots flying the Atreides banner, wreaking death upon the universe. Uh, okay, good, Taylor. I'm glad you got the joke. And yeah, it sounds like no matter what he does, uh, the avalanche has started. The chain of events has started. The Fremen give him the name Usul and Muad'Dib, but as a small act of rebellion against the visions, he asks that his name be Paul Muad'Dib rather than just Muad'Dib. That was something that he hadn't seen in any of his prescient visions. And I thought that was great. Very, very well done. Muad'Dib! And then we get a villain chapter, which I'm very excited for. You know, I always love those. The Duke and Lady Fenring arrive on Giedi Prime, and Fade Rotha is introduced to them. He wants to dedicate a kill to Lady Fenring, but she does not give him permission to do so. And we get a little glimpse into what the arrangement between Baron Harkonnen and the Emperor was like, or is like, and what it cost the Baron. Uh, the Duke and the Baron chat, and it seems as if the Emperor may want to set his sights on the Harkonnens next, which makes sense. You want to tie up your loose ends, I suppose, and uh, the Baron should tread a careful line. If the Emperor was willing to do that to the Atreides, who's to say he wouldn't do it to the Harkonnens next? Let's see. The two argue over the blackmail they hold over each other. So it's a little bit of a standoff between the two. The Sardaukar being unceremoniously removed from Arrakis causes some issue. They argue about the remaining Fremen. Baron Harkonnen vehemently believes that the Fremen don't need to be worried about, that there aren't very many of them. And it seems that the Emperor has discovered reports of foliage growing in uninhabitable parts of Arrakis. The Baron doesn't believe the reports, and the nature by which the Emperor seems to have gotten these reports violates. Again, I think it's the Chom company. Um, uh, there were some logistics regarding who's allowed to scan the planet and when and where. Um, and basically, the Emperor shouldn't be scanning. And if I recall correctly, the Fremen are also bribing. Again, I think it's the Chom company. Um, to make sure that what they are doing in their attempts to terraform the planet go unnoticed. So that's all really juicy to see and read. It's really exciting for me. Let's see. The Baron doesn't believe the reports. He's very wary of the Duke's veiled threats and comments, particularly in front of some of the minor houses. Also, this Duke is so frustrating to read because there's a lot of yeah, a lot of those vocalizations, and it makes reading him very slow. A bit of a slight tangent, but the Dune Emperor feels like the direct inspiration for the Star Wars Emperor, which makes for some interesting comparisons when the Dune Emperor seems to be much more hostile toward his own major houses. I had not thought about comparing those two. That's very interesting. It almost makes me want to go back and rewatch the prequels um, at some point with that comparison in mind. That's that's really interesting. I've never been the biggest Star Wars person, so yeah, I like that. I do know that Darth Vader, or at least his outfit, was inspired by Doctor Doom, who is one of my favorite Marvel villains. So that's my tidbit and tangent. Let's see. Where was I? He's very wary of the Duke's veiled threats and comments. Also, the Duke and Lady Fenring have like secret ways of communicating with each other, um, phrases and so on, which is very neat. That's new info to me. Pretty cool. Yes. The Duke informs the Baron that the Emperor is displeased that Hawait is alive. And oh, did I ever get the Hawait payoffs that I wanted? Very excited with that because none of that was in the movie, and that was probably the thing I was most excited for. As I'm reading through the Paul and Jessica chapters, which weren't particularly short in in this section, I'm just thinking to myself, I have to know what's happening with Hawait. That was like where my interest really lied. Not that I disliked any of the Paul Jessica stuff. It's just I was excited for Hawait. Anyway, the Duke orders Hawait to be put to death. And he also comments that the Emperor has not officially sanctioned naming Feyd-Rautha as heir. And that seems like a very big deal to me. So there's a lot of tension between these two frenemies, I guess you could say. They all go to Feyd-Rautha's gladiatorial match. Hawait concocted a plan with Feyd-Rautha to earn Feyd-Rautha a claim. Instead of a show against drugged gladiators, one of the gladiators would be fully cognizant. Uh, and Feyd-Rautha has also switched which blade of his carries the traditional poison. So he's got two blades, one in his right, one in his left. I think they're slightly different in terms of size. There are cultural elements behind this, and generally one hand is supposed to have the poisoned blade, but he switches that, which seems a little dirty, but not beyond what I would believe of them. Um, he switches the blade poison, and there is, of course, a safety word embedded in the gladiator's mind so as to cause him to freeze in case something should go wrong. Feyd-Rautha does at some point wonder if Hawait's plan was made in earnest, or if there was a hope that the gladiator would successfully harm Feyd-Rautha, which is interesting. So there's that fundamental mistrust underneath it all, and that thought enters into the Baron's mind, not the Baron, the Duke's mind later on as well in a really wonderful way. But I believe we'll get to that. Feyd-Rautha does end up finding himself in a perilous position with the gladiator, nearly killing him, but he uses the safe word, and no one watching is any the wiser as to what happened. What happened being that essentially Feyd-Rautha lost, or at least should have lost. And that is wild to me. That feels incredibly important. I think he wins in Dune Part 2. Although one of the attending guards does help a little bit. But anyway, Feyd-Rautha lost. But he won. Uh, let's see. Lost my place. Need to take better categorized notes. Safety word, Gladiator nearly kills him, but Feyd-Rautha uses the safe word. No one is watching, is any the wiser. He poisons the Gladiator, who then kills himself. But Feyd-Rautha wonders if Hawait is playing that deeper game, which we had discussed. So there's some respect from Feyd-Rautha to the Gladiator for being able to kill himself before the poison does it in a much more painful manner. The Duke and Lady Fenring notice that Feyd-Rautha was unsurprised that the Gladiator had not been drugged. Even so, they find his performance impressive. Uh, he regrets the Duke, and yeah, the Duke regrets ordering that Hawait be killed, which, yeah, if Hawait is secretly undermining the Harkonnens as best he can, and that's not a bad plan, we don't know for certain, but I suspect that to be the case, uh, yeah, then you want him alive. And it does sound like the Duke, at least, would be pro Atreides, or that the Emperor, the Duke, on behalf of the Emperor, perhaps regrets, or not so much regrets, but uh, well, he's not happy with the situation. He does not yet feel secure, I suppose. The books seem to be much more focused on making the Harkonnens politically savvy, almost lazy, and the movies, the younger Harkonnens are more physically imposing. Yeah, yeah. Um, we have yet to get more of. I'm blanking on his name. Uh, the Beast. Uh, the one that isn't Feyd-Rautha. Dave Bautista played him. Raban. It's Raban. And that's a shame because what little we got of him, I was so interested in whether or not Raban is smarter than he seems. So the Duke regrets ordering that Hawait be killed, and they talk through their plan for Lady Fenring to become impregnated by Feyd-Rautha. So that's more of the Bene Gesserit plans to um, collect the best DNA to birth the Kwisatz Haderach. And she does kind of regret that they weren't able to get Paul's DNA for it. And it sounds to me a little bit like the Duke is not entirely happy with Lady Fenring doing this, but he's long ago accepted that it's a necessary thing to do. So that was really interesting dimension to the character. Let's see. Then we switch back to Paul. Uh, they arrive at the Sietch, and the populace is in the process of abandoning the location. Chani is separated from Paul as news of Kynes' death gets to them. They don't specifically say how that news came to be, excuse me, which I would be a bit interested in knowing. I understand why it might not be, but I was interested there. The news gets to them, and Paul is supposed to take responsibility for Jamis's woman and two children. That came as a massive surprise to me. Wasn't expecting it at all. Paul is wary of accepting responsibility for Hurrah, who's the woman, the wife, I guess. But he's told the two could change the arrangement after a year, or something to that effect. He's brought to Jamis's home, and I keep thinking to myself throughout this, Paul's totally in danger right now. They're gonna want revenge for Jamis or something. Maybe I'm just paranoid. Um, but also it doesn't help that Paul is an outsider here, so he doesn't know what is the norm. But Hurrah compliments Paul's not yet blue eyes. She explains the science behind how they're planting the vegetation and how they keep it watered, and they how they endeavor to prevent it from just simply dying. And that's all really fascinating science stuff that goes a little over my head, but I assume it's well taken care of. This book is really good at making you paranoid around every corner. Yeah, yeah, that has been my experience. It's crazy because you know everything that's going to happen. They tell you the plans right off the bat. Chapter two, I think it is. You see into everyone's mind, and yet you can't turn away. Jessica and Stilgar await the Reverend Mother. Paul arrives. He's guarded by his two new young sons, and the Reverend Mother arrives with Chani. This was a really trippy and psychedelic chapter, by the way. Uh, Chani is in mourning. Stilgar tells Jessica and Paul that they must leave the Sietch that night. Or rather, if I recall correctly, the Reverend Mother tells Stilgar to tell them. Jessica is amazed how large the place is. There seem to be nearly 10,000 Fremen, which is a lot. And if it's that per Sietch, I don't know how many Sietches are out there, but that does come off the back of the previous chapter where uh, the Baron Harkonnen is like, there are barely any Fremen left, nothing to worry about. It's nice to get numbers like this. It's like forcing the reader into Paul's shoes of knowing what absolute horror is about to happen and being completely helpless when nobody can do anything. I think you've hit the nail on the head, Tall Being. That's it right there, and it's a testament to Frank Herbert's talent as a writer to do that. It's really really well done. I I won't pretend to be the most well-read person in the world, but this may be one of the best books I've read because of things like this. It's incredible. I love this book so much. It's great. Um, Jessica has agreed to perform some sort of rite because the Reverend Mother will not survive leaving the Sietch. Chani is consecrated in the Sayadina. Chani performs the rite, and Jessica drinks the water of life. Her perception of time freezes. We got a fellow Dune fan. Yippee! Yes, yes, you do. Uh, she drinks the water of life, and her perception of time freezes. Jessica has some sort of psychic conversation with the Reverend Mother, who is surprised that Jessica's pregnant. So I didn't put it in the notes, but she does have a worry before drinking the water of life as to whether or not she should mention it, and she doesn't. They calm the fetus, and then the Reverend Mother gives Jessica her experiences. Um, so this is Bene Gesserit stuff. And if I recall correctly from things I've heard outside of it, it's this idea that part of what the Bene Gesserit are doing and why they have yet to make a male child, Paul being the exception because Jessica's going against that stuff, is there's like genetic memory so that they can all see each other's. I don't know. Like I said, it was a trippy and psychedelic chapter, and Jessica gets all of the Reverend Mother's experiences, and so does the fetus. And there are a lot of moral implications and concerns, ethical concerns that Jessica considers. But they move on from that fairly quickly. And uh, let's see. Jessica is now a Reverend Mother. She has become a Reverend Mother. And she cycles through a metaphorical hallway of memories. And she sees that the water of life is the exhalation of a drowned sandworm. So naturally, that this implies that the spice is also connected to the sandworms, but we more or less already knew that. We just don't know the details. Uh, she does something that changes the water of life, I think. And Paul and everyone's supposed to start celebrating and drinking water. Um, Paul is nervous to drink the changed water of life, but he does drink it, and then he leaves with Chani. Uh, and she reveals to him that the Fremen seem to see things when they're near Paul, and Chani sees herself with their child, and she's scared, and it's it's a very sweet moment, but also Paul is tripping, and he's dealing with everything that he's seeing, and the looming jihad weighs on his mind very heavily, very nervous making. But they comfort each other. He comforts her and then sees the future. He sees Fade Rotha, the Imperium, the Guild, the Bene Gesserit, and more. And so, they speak to each other. They comfort each other. Paul cries for those not yet dead, uh, and they continue to comfort each other. And I'm gonna look for. I think there was a specific line. Um, Uh, Usul, you're crying, Chani murmured. Usul, my strength, do you give moisture to the dead? To who's dead? To no one's, to one's not yet dead, he said. Then let them have their time of life, she said. He sensed through the drug fog how right she was, pulled her against him with savage pressure. Sihaya, he said. She put a palm against his cheek. I'm no longer afraid, Usul. Look at me. I see what you see when you hold me thus. What do you see? He demanded. I see us giving love to each other in a time of quiet between storms. It's what we were meant to do. Very, very sweet, sweet moment. And that's where I left off. That ends part two or book two. Looking ahead, book three is about the prophet, and I am very excited to get to it. I also note that there are some appendices at the end, uh, which seem to be, uh, well, I'm excited to get to them. Let's see. That was my reading for the week. I don't have any updates on Vortex Dimensions again this week, unfortunately. I did spend a considerable amount of time working on my fantasy novel. I'm going to keep info on that one entirely to the chest, I think, just because I have particularly high aspirations for it. But it's not like I didn't spend this week writing. I did. I'm just not prepped to share it quite yet. I suppose I can say, in the vaguest of terms, that I've been having an issue regarding the protagonist needing something at a specific point in the story, and I've been struggling to figure out how he would have that thing. And I think I figured that out this week. So that was a nice little victory, we'll call it. I think that's all I've got. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Tall Being, for hanging out with me. I am very excited for next week. I'm very excited for more Sanderson content to air because, well, I know what's coming in the episodes, and I think you'll all enjoy it. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.